welcome back. This is Bando's Breakdowns, episode 13 for this week. It is officially Wednesday, July 17th, 2024 at the time that this is coming out. It's just a little after, obviously, 3 Eastern, so thank you again for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. A lot to get to on today's show. As usual, for those of you who don't know by now, this is the one show a week from Zain Bando where you can hear my unfiltered takes and opinions on the world of sports between 30 and 45 minutes every single week. So that's obviously a little different than what I do on the main flagship show, the MMA Outsiders, where that one is all combat sports. This is all sports. Anything can go on this show, etc., etc. So I'm happy to have you guys here. Before we get into the show itself, I just wanted to take care of a few quick orders of business. So without further ado, be sure to like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You can do so at youtube.com/ETB Network as we are slowly but surely approaching 1,000 subscribers. So if you do those 3 things, as well as hit the notification bell, it will come up in your notifications and it will help out the algorithm tremendously as more videos get recommended to all of you. And for those of you who are watching me on the video only feed on YouTube, you can also do so on audio only platforms. You can listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, YouTube Premium, and so much more. So we greatly appreciate all of your support. And if you're listening on the audio only platforms, be sure to check me out on the YouTube home as well. Again, and that's youtube.com/ETB Network. Bookmark it, save it, do whatever you have to do, because then that way you won't miss a single episode of this show or any other show that's going to be taking place across the network and does take place across the network on a weekly basis. And we also have some new stuff coming out as well with some newer, more short-form content. So stay tuned for all of that. To learn more about the network, you can go to etbpodcast.com. That's where we post all of our blogs from some of our contributors. Anything currently from the NBA offseason to the NFL offseason, you can check out all of the great work that's being done by Brett Cagle, Grant Winsauer, and others over there. So shout out to both of them for the consistent work that they do every single week. I greatly appreciate them as someone who oversees their work. So shout out to them, and be sure to tune in for more great blogs from them and some of our other contributors. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you guys that this episode of Bando's Breakdowns and every show on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network is presented by Playbacks. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. You can do so and join our community right now by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule, which we're going to have some stuff coming up, potentially surrounding the WNBA All-Star Game, as well as some potential film study content ahead of UFC 304 a week from Saturday in Manchester, England, headlined by 2 title fights. Of course, you got Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad, and then the interim heavyweight championship between Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades. Now, with that out of the way, we're going to jump right in to the introduction. We're going to go over everything that's going to be discussed today, a little bit of a mix of everything. We're going to talk about Copa America. We're going to talk about UFC Vegas 94. We're going to preview Jake Paul versus Mike Perry. We're going to go over some more stuff about Caitlin Clark. We're going to go over a very disturbing video that came out surrounding what Jerry Rice did on TMZ. It's a very, very disappointing video. In case you guys haven't seen it, he went absolutely berserk on a reporter about less than a week or so ago at a golf tournament. So very, very disturbing stuff there. I'm going to react to that. I'm going to react to some recent news about Jon Jones and a bunch of other fun stuff as well. Also going to go over some Olympics stuff. Remind you guys just surrounding the college football video game, with the official release date being Friday. The early access release is already out. It came out a couple of days ago from the time that this is being premiered, and a couple of other things as well. So a lot of very fun stuff. So let's jump right into it. We have Zain's overview. to begin the show. And I want to start out with something that I don't normally talk about, and that is soccer. We had the Copa America final between Argentina versus Colombia, and I'm not necessarily reacting to the match itself, because the match lived up to the hype. For sure, these were obviously the two best teams. They made it to the championship stage, so good for both Argentina and Colombia. But the bigger overarching story of this whole thing is what took place ahead of the game. So, for those of you who don't know, the championship game was in Miami Gardens, Florida, which is where Hard Rock Stadium is, which is where the Miami Dolphins play their home games during the NFL season. And it was a melee cesspool, if to put it lightly. This was a brutal situation for all parties involved. You had fans without tickets trying to jump the barricade, sneak into the stadium, and destroy the stadium in the process. And this may be my bias coming out, because I am not a soccer person whatsoever. I don't think I ever will be a soccer person whatsoever. I just want to say this wholeheartedly. What these people did to Hard Rock Stadium, what these people did in representing whatever team they wanted, what these people did in representing Copa America, quite literally, considering that they're supporting the league at large, is disgusting. This is a championship event where the tickets are let's just say well off for probably some of those people, to put it lightly. And when you're spending that kind of money, potentially to travel out of the country, I bet there were tons of Argentinian people, there are tons of people that travel from Colombia, to be at this match. This is what you don't do before a championship match. You want to be civil. I understand soccer's a crazy sport. I understand it's a religion over there, but could you imagine if this happened before a Super Bowl? Could you imagine if this happened before an NBA Finals? Could you imagine if this happened before a UFC event? Could you imagine if this happened before WrestleMania or SummerSlam or any of these other major sporting events that we consider a big deal in America? It would be one of the biggest stories in the world. And I'm not saying this story is huge, but what I am saying is that this needs more care. This needs more attention. This is disappointing. So, according to a Yahoo Sports article written by Henry Bushnell, one of the staff writers there, the headline of this piece was "Copa America Final Chaos: Argentina Colombia delayed, fans stuck outside after gates breached and closed." This is not a headline you want to be writing. This is just a this is just a very interesting paragraph, and a scene that just paints the whole picture as to what was going on. It's very clear that security didn't have their stuff together, and neither did the fans. So let me just briefly read this to you again. This is according to a Yahoo Sports article that was written the night of the game. It says, for an extended period of time in the hour before the scheduled 8 p.m. kickoff, all stadium gates were closed. Organizers announced that the match had been delayed until at least 8:30. It eventually began at 9:22. Fans, meanwhile, were suffering. Children were crying, which is the worst thing you could have happen. You know, I'm sure 5 through 13-year-olds were super excited for this game because it was probably the biggest sporting event they'll have ever gone to in their lives at this point, and this is all they remember. So children were crying. Multiple people reportedly passed out. Multiple men were bloodied by police as security refused to let fans enter. The crushed top of the barriers. Kids and parents squealed and screamed in panic. I mean, this is brutal. This is not what you want to have happen. Someone is at fault for this. I don't know who that person is, but let me tell you what, this is a brutal situation. It makes Copa America look bad. It makes the sport of soccer look bad. And frankly, this is one of the reasons why, people don't follow soccer in the United States, is because of stuff like this, because they're worried that crazy things are going to happen. Full disclosure, I know this is slightly off topic, but this is what I can equate it to from my own life experience. I went to UFC 264. That was headlined by Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. It will always be known as the first event in Las Vegas with fans post-COVID. So that was a very cool experience. Nothing like this even remotely happened. People sprinted into the T-Mobile Arena for the weigh-ins, and when the doors opened the night of the fight, but no one was seriously injured. No one was trying to push each other. No one was trying to cause any commotion. People got to their seats safely. And all I can remember the night of the event was a T-Mobile security guard telling me and several others to not run. We did not run. We safely went to our seats. We did the whole thing. Just to give you a little context, if a UFC event post COVID, which would be on a similar scale to something like this, considering Conor McGregor was the main event, if that can be handled in an orderly fashion, and if Super Bowls can be handled in an orderly fashion, there's no way that this couldn't be handled in an orderly fashion as well. And just to give you a little bit more context, I mean, to have the match delayed till 9:22 Eastern. That's brutal. That impacts the rest of Fox's TV schedule. They obviously had the nightly news to air that night. They had other stuff they had to air at certain times of the day. Just absolutely brutal from a whole scheduling standpoint. And again, as I just alluded to a second ago, somebody is at fault for all this. This should have never happened. Kids should have never been crying. People should have never tried to sneak in without tickets. Just a total disaster all around. And Copa America needs to look themselves in the mirror and figure out what they want to do in the future, because this is not good. Not good at all. So moving right along from that to something a little bit more substantial, this weekend we have Jake Paul versus Mike Perry from the Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. For those of you who don't know, that's the home of the Tampa Bay Lightning. This fight was originally supposed to be Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson in Arlington, Texas. Obviously, that fight is now being moved to November. So this is the fight we get. Very interesting fight, considering that Mike Perry is now moving over from bare knuckle fighting championships, where he's been very successful, to do this fight against someone in Jake Paul who quite frankly, is probably criticized at this point. I mean, he just knocked out Ryan Borland, and before that, obviously he fought Nate Diaz, and then of course lost to Tommy Fury. So obviously he only has one loss. Mike Perry is coming into Jake Paul's territory now. So that will be very interesting to see what transpires in this one. For those of you who listened to episode 91 of the MMA Outsiders, you know what my pick is here. I like Jake Paul in round 6. I think bare knuckle boxing is a little bit different than legitimate boxing. Will Mike Perry land some decent shots on Jake Paul? Will he win a round or two? More than likely. But I think Jake Paul's stamina, having been in the ring a little bit longer, having a few more years of experience than Perry in this arena as opposed to MMA or a different arena, I think is going to compromise Mike Perry in such a way to where he eventually will get knocked out. As a longtime MMA fan, would I love to see Mike Perry win? Absolutely. It would be a win for the MMA community at large. It would be a win for everyone who lost to Jake Paul, including Nate Diaz, knowing that there's some vengeance there. So a lot of very interesting stuff at play here, but I like Jake Paul to win this fight in mid to late round 6 by KO. A very entertaining fight. Again, you can pick that fight up on DAZN just to give you a little bit more of a background on what to expect on fight night. So as I just alluded to, the fight is Saturday night. It is July 20th. Again, as I just alluded to, it is going to be taking place in Tampa, Florida. The card begins at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, where I am, 7 Pacific. The ring walk for Paul versus Perry is expected to begin, according to DAZN, at midnight Eastern. So plan for a late night, considering that boxing has a lot of pacing issues. Anticipate a potential delay there. And as well, be sure to remind yourself too that that this event is being streamed multiple places, including DAZN.com and PPV.com. PPV.com, though, just a note on that one, you don't need a subscription to DAZN. You already need a subscription in order to buy the fight. You can't just buy the fight exclusively on its own. So just something to keep in mind there. You can watch the fight from anywhere on the DAZN app, from any major supported streaming device. So that isn't a big deal there. Just a quick background on Jake Paul. He was born in 1997, currently sitting at 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. He has 9 fights in professional boxing, sitting at a 9-1 record with 6 KOs. Mike Perry, also American, was born in 1991, 5 days before my birthday. Actually, he was born September 15th, sitting at 5'10", with a 77-inch reach, and his only professional boxing match was a loss. He currently sits at 0-1. This fight card is relatively kind of deep. We got Jake Paul in the main event. We got Amanda Serrano still competing, even though she has Katie Taylor waiting in the wings for her in September. She'll be taking on Stevie Morgan. We have a bunch of other undercard fights, including a fight that I don't think anyone's really excited about. We have a very old and washed up Julio Cesar Chavez taking on Uriah Hall, who's obviously a UFC veteran. So that'll be interesting to see who even shows up in that one. And I can't really talk about any of the other fights on the card just because I don't exactly know. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 fights total on this card. Again, you can pick that up Saturday night, July 20th. Paul versus Perry, Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Don't miss it. Should be a very interesting event. It's being dubbed as Fear No Man, which is very interesting. I don't fully understand the branding from MVP's perspective, but I guess you can do it that way. You will. Again, assuming Jake Paul wins this fight, his next one is penciled in for Mike Tyson back in Texas, which was going to be the original location of this fight in November. So stay tuned for more Tyson Paul coverage on that front as we slowly but surely get to that fight. Okay, with my prediction and the breakdown of the fight and where you can see it and all of that out of the way, I wanted to remind you that my fellow colleagues, the hosts of Puncher's Chance, Brett Cagle and Anthony Ballister, will be joining producer Pat Dana for a special live stream reaction fight companion to the Jake Paul Mike Perry contest. So just to give you a little bit more context, here's a bit more brief information as to what you can expect. So join Puncher's Chance for a special watch along of the Jake Paul versus Mike Perry fight this Saturday beginning at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. As I just alluded to, join Brett Cagle and Anthony Ballister alongside Pat Dana, producer of the MMA Outsiders, who will be giving their live reactions to the co-main event bout between Amanda Serrano and Stevie Morgan, and of course, the main event battle between Jake Paul and Mike Perry. Will Jake Paul mark off another name under his belt, or will Mike Perry become the second to defeat Paul in the boxing ring? Come find out with us, youtube.com/ETB Network, this Saturday, July 20th at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. So if you want an alternate broadcast, if you will, ETB Sports and ETB Network is the place to be with that with a trio. You might be wondering, Zam, why are you not with him? It is because I've been tasked to do some live blog results for the Sporting News. I'm excited to just that I can officially say that. So if you need live blog and up to the minute play by play results on the Sporting News front, and you are a loyal Sporting News reader, look no further because I will have you locked down for Paul versus Perry remotely, of course. But it should be a very, very fun evening. So we're going to transition now from the boxing ring to mixed martial arts. And we had a bit of a teaser, if you will. So for those of you who don't know by now, and if you don't know this, you've been living under a rock, but obviously there was an assassination attempt on former U.S. President and 45th President Donald Trump. For those of you in the MMA community who know by now, Conor McGregor spoke out very passionately about this and how disappointed he was in the in what the now dead shooter did. And in the midst of that, Michael Chandler saw his tweet and essentially quote tweeted it and said that we are united on this issue, we are united on this front, if you will. And then just in casual passing, Conor McGregor was like, "Hey, Mike, I just talked to Dana, and it looks like our plans to do this fight in 2024 are all good, or looking good rather." And then Dana White went on Pat McAfee and essentially said that that's the fight that has to happen, but he has no concrete plan as to when this fight is going to be taking place. And based on what Ariel Helwani said the other day, all signs seem to be pointing to the fact that this fight, unlike my prediction last week, which I was very fired up about, if you have not seen that clip, it's posted both on the ETB Network socials as well as the Bando's Breakdown socials. I wanted to see this fight at the Sphere. It looks like that's not going to be the case anymore. It looks like it is being potentially targeted for UFC 310. And I would say, based on the question I proposed, I would say, yeah, we're closer to a fight date for sure because when his toe injury issue was going on, there was 3 weeks of silence. And now that the pair are talking, it seems like they're in mutual agreement that they still want to fight each other. My percentage level has gone up. Am I still not going to believe it until the week of the fight, until they're in the cage? Yeah, but as far as another announcement coming shortly, I would say yeah. I mean, I think it definitely will. Think it has the potential to. I want to see the fight happen. I know that fellow people in and around on this network don't necessarily care if the fight happens anymore. I'm still one of the few people that does, considering I've watched Conor McGregor forever, and I think that every single one of his fights in the UFC are some of the most entertaining I've seen, and he's just must see TV. So this fight has to happen. It's got to happen in 2024, and I would say yeah, we are closer to a fight date. It's just a matter of when the UFC feels like they can choose to announce it. Seems like they're focused on many other things, including getting the Spear card dialed in. What's going to happen in New York, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in my Zain Zinger segment regarding one of the potential headliners of that card, as well as who's going to headline the Abu Dhabi and Salt Lake City shows. So we're going to get more into that as we move into some of the other segments here on this program. But yeah, as far as this fight goes, I think we are definitely closer to a fight date for sure. And sticking with UFC, we have a card this weekend in Las Vegas. We got UFC Vegas 94. Not the greatest card in the world, and I'm going to tell you why. There's some matchups on this card, to put it lightly, that are a little bit questionable. There's the main event, which is obviously a critical main event between Jan Roma and Lemos, is a good fight, but there's just a lot of fights on this card that just to me don't make sense. Like Kurt Halaba versus Krzyzewski doesn't make sense. I mean, Brad Tavares is still sticking around. He's fighting a guy with potential. Hyder Emil's on this card, but this is a card where like if you're a hardcore, in my opinion, you need to be really in on this card. And this is something to where I believe it goes back to an argument that several other people have, is that the UFC has too many cards. Like if this card, someone mentioned it on social media, I'm not going to mention who, but a prominent name in the space mentioned on social media and in other mediums that if this card doesn't happen, no one would even notice, just because it's an Apex level card. And it's at the Apex, obviously, and it is an earlier start. And the main event, is nothing appetizing. Amanda Lemos obviously is a former title challenger. And Dejan Doroba's biggest test to date, for sure, and the biggest fight of her career. I'm not discounting how big that fight is, but to do it with the card that it is around it, no way. So just to give you a little bit of some background, so you guys know the specifics going in. So this card is on ESPN and ESPN Plus. It's obviously, as I just alluded to, a fight night card from the Apex. The prelims begin on ESPN2. The card is 12 fights, which is a little bit crazy. Something I forgot to mention in the last segment regarding the McGregor Chandler Spear stuff, and I'll re-emphasize it later in the show, is that card is supposed to be 10 fights according to Dana White. You got Amanda Lemos here taking on Verna Jandaroba, excuse me. We got Brad Tavares taking on Jun Young Park. Steve Garcia versus Sung Woo Choi, which might be the most entertaining fight on the card because Steve Garcia is a stud. Kurt Halaba, as I just alluded to, is on this card. Miranda Maverick is on this card. Lewick is on this card. There's some names that hardcore fans know, but if you're someone who watches the UFC every so often, this is a card I would skip. She'll get the job done by decision across 25 minutes. I don't think it'll be too big of a deal as long as she can weather the early storm of Jandaroba on the feet. She should be fine, and as long as it doesn't end before the first two rounds, she should be able to walk away with a decision relatively easily. So I think that'll go according to plan. And just to give you guys some other numbers, some things that I never got a chance to give you guys previous weeks, and something that I normally do. And by the way, this is the second consecutive UFC event in a row. Obviously, they took a break the week of July 6th. That was the week of the George Masvidal Nate Diaz fight. So just to give you a quick overview on how I'm doing. So currently on UFC, I'm not doing too great. We had a bit of a rough week last week with UFC Denver, 5-6-1. Did get the main event correct, however. Currently sitting at 157, 125-4. So not not the greatest record. My producer behind the scenes and the producer on the MMA Outsiders are currently sitting between one another, tied at 181 wins. So standings are going to get. It would have been interesting. Also doing okay on main event, sitting at a 14-9 overall clip. So can't fully complain. But some of these cards have been very difficult to pick. I think if you're someone who knows MMA, although this is a good card to pick. And finally, for my conclusion, is this card worth watching? I would say probably not, unless you have to, for various reasons. So moving right along off of UFC Vegas 94, we're going to transition to the NFL. So we had some unfortunate news over the weekend that Jacoby Jones unfortunately passed away. So rest in peace to him, and condolences to his family. Has one of the greatest division round touchdowns of all time about a decade ago in Denver playing the Broncos. This was the game that went to double overtime. He had a critical touchdown in this game, which we which which really did turn the corner and might actually be one of the most important touchdowns in the history of the Ravens franchise. They obviously went on that year to win the Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers, and one of the best Super Bowls in recent memory. And speaking of, that's the Denver team that a lot of people thought, like, oh, could they win a bunch of Super Bowls in a row? But obviously that didn't happen. Um and what was even more interesting was what was even more interesting about this game was that Denver had several chances to win and they couldn't do it. It's known as the Mile High. It's known as the Mile High Miracle Game. So if you want to talk about games with names, January 12th, 2013, defining moment in NFL history. Also a defining moment for Jacoby Jones. Just to run through some of his career stats really quick, considering that we are paying tribute to him. And I also want to read the statement that was put out by his family. This is according to Texans Daily Fan Nation. So here's the statement. We want to express our gratitude for all of the kind thoughts and support you have shown us during this challenging time. Your ongoing support and respecting our privacy means a lot to us. We are deeply saddened to share that Jacoby Jones, a beloved former Ravens football player from New Orleans and proud graduate of an HBCU, has passed away at the age of 40 from Jones's family via the NFL Players Association. The Texans also wrote on X on Sunday, "We are deeply saddened to hear about the passing of Jacoby Jones. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this difficult time." Just some quick news and notes. Played his first 5 years at the Houston Texans. He caught 127 balls for 2,733 yards and 14 touchdowns, primarily as a return specialist. And then, of course, he signed with the Ravens, and as I just alluded to, played a huge role in that Denver game, in the Super Bowl, and had one of the most legendary touchdowns of all time, 108-yard kickoff return, which is still a record for the longest kickoff return in Super Bowl history. I think he broke Desmond Howard's record that he set in like 1997 against the Patriots or something like that. So a very promising career. He finished his career in total 203 catches, 2,733 yards, and 14 touchdowns, and he had five kick returns and 4 punts that went back to the crib, if you will. So prayers to he and his family and everyone that's close to Jacoby Jones. He will be sorely missed by both the Texans and Ravens community as well as the NFL community. So I just wanted to give my condolences there. Wanted to move on to Team USA. They've had a bunch of games already in pre-Olympic play, both in Las Vegas and in Abu Dhabi, and they've actually played quite well. Had a bit of a scare against Australia and barely won that. Played pretty well against Canada And overall, I mean, this USA team is just very balanced. They have a lot of NBA stars on this team. Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, LeBron James. I keep going. This team is very good. Let's put it that way. To me, they are the favorites to win a gold medal. They should win a gold medal at least. And this is a team that I think is on the rise, and a team that I think needs to be taken a little bit more seriously. So, just to give you a little bit of a run through on their remaining schedule, as well as we get closer and closer to the Olympics, which begin at the end of July from Paris. So, with that being said, according to the Team USA 5-on-5 Men's Olympics basketball website, so their first game in pre-Olympic play, they defeated Canada 86-72. They knocked off Australia 98-92 on July 15th, which was Monday night. And of course, they've got games against Serbia, and they also have a game against South Sudan. Those are on the 17th and 20th. They also played Germany to close out their slate July 22nd. And then in Olympics play so far, when the Olympics begin, rather, they'll play Serbia again, they'll play South Sudan, and they'll play Puerto Rico. Those are all in the group stage before, obviously, they move on to the knockout stage and so much more. So stay tuned for more of this Team USA Olympic basketball squad, this men's squad. They'll be gunning for gold to prove that they're the best country in the world. Let's put it as simply as I could. So now we're going to stick with basketball, moving over to the WNBA. Caitlin Clark is doing tremendous things. She's got the Indiana Fever currently on a 3-game winning streak. They got a decent stretch here coming up before the Olympics break, and she continues to make history all around. Whether it's setting records for whether it's her accolades surrounding double doubles, whether you think she's going to be the WNBA MVP, if you will, or you don't. All just exciting stuff all around in terms of Clark and what she can contribute. But an interesting thing to think about, though, in regards to her, is that she's doing things that very few people can do, even breaking as early as team franchise records. So just to get the exact figures correct, Caitlin Clark and the Fever did play a week ago Friday, and something very very special happened. So with that being said, this was in their game against the Phoenix Mercury. According to a release from the Indiana Fever, it says Clark's 7 first quarter assists broke a franchise record, giving her ownership over Fever records for both assists in a single quarter 7 and assists in a single game 13. For her first 24 games, Clark has tied her own franchise assist record 4 times. Think about how hard that is to do. She's only 22 years old. She wears the number 22, was the greatest player in Iowa women's basketball history, was drafted number 1 overall, and is doing things like that less than 30 games into her career. If that doesn't scream WNBA MVP honors, or at least consideration, I don't know what does. Iran is officially over on this. People need to continue to respect Caitlin Clark if you don't already. You cannot like her off-court antics. You cannot like her avoiding outside noise. You can say whatever you want, but you have to respect her game, and it's as simple as that. Now we're going to transition into Zinger. We're going to go a little bit out of order on this one, considering that one of my upcoming segments, which I think you guys are going to be excited about, it's coming. It's more so just a timing thing at this point. But moving into Zinger, we got 2 this week. Starting up with a very, very disturbing TMZ video that came out regarding former San Francisco 49ers great. He obviously played for the Raiders as well. So for those of you who don't know, there was a celebrity golf tournament over the weekend, and Jerry Rice was caught in some hot water. And essentially what he did was he made a reporter feel very, very short-sighted and kind of dumb, to be fair. And I think this was a bad look. I'm not going to repeat I'm not going to repeat what exactly he said, but according to Fox News Colorado and several other sources, he said something to the effect of all I'm just going to say without the expletives. He said something to the effect of "I'll knock you out." There was a question that the reporter asked that Jerry Rice clearly didn't like and took offense to, and I I think I think this is very disappointing, and I'm gonna explain why this is disappointing. He was actually asked about why the 49ers lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and he got very offended. And according to a Yahoo Sports article, it says after the incident, the Spectator asked one of the reporters who works for Starcade Media, according to TMZ, what happened. And he said, it's the craziest thing that's ever happened in my life. Then said that he asked Rice if the Chiefs receiving corps was good enough to win the Super Bowl. And essentially, Rice was not happy about this. And I just want to be blunt here. You can be anyone. You can be Jerry Rice. You can be Tom Brady. You could be Roger Federer. You can be any of these famous people. You don't go out in a public setting like that, no matter if cameras around or not, and tell anybody that you'll mess them up. Without saying what he actually said, it's just uncalled for. He's a bigger guy than that. He wants to be a role model to younger people, and this definitely should should have made and did make the journalists feel uncomfortable because it's clear from the video and it's clear from what I just read to all of you that he was asking a football question. He was simply asking a question related to the 49ers receiving corp and why with the talent they had they couldn't win the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Pretty simple question, and someone who's been in the know and plugged into that franchise for 2 decades, well, both as a player, an ex-player, and other stuff that he's been able to do around the NFL. Really disappointing stuff. And if I'm a Niner fan by any stretch, or even a Raider fan, when Raider fans were able to see him lace up for the Raiders too, I'd be very, very disappointed. So I, as someone who has loved what he's been able to do for the sport, it's a bad look, and I think Rice needs to look in the mirror and realize that he shouldn't have done that. All right, now moving on to the second Zinger, something I really don't want to talk about, but I have to talk about this. New news has come out in the last 48 to 72 hours that Jon Jones has been charged with misdemeanors stemming from an incident that took place in the spring involving a drug testing taker, to where they said that they were threatened by the UFC heavyweight champion. And to put it simply, as someone who's watched every Jon Jones fight for the last 10 years plus, truly, it's truly sad. I mean, this guy can't get out of his own way. I mentioned it on episode 91 of the MMA Outsiders. There's not a single year in the United States that could be constituted as a normal year, quote unquote, whatever that means anymore, without this guy getting in trouble. And sure enough, he's in trouble again. Will anything come of this? Probably not, because the UFC knows they have a lot of financials at stake with this fight in November. This Stipe Miocic fight has been on the back burner for 3 years. They need to make it happen. And it's disappointing, to say the least, that he just simply doesn't seem to realize what he's up against. He hasn't defended the heavyweight title in over a year. There's the argument that he should be stripped. I think that if he doesn't make this fight in November, he should be stripped. And this goes against everything that Dana White continues to tell reporters. We keep saying, oh, he's the pound for pound best fighter in the world. But then there's the argument like, oh, he's not active enough. Dana White doesn't see it that way. It's just disappointing. Whatever you can say about Jones continues to get mitigated because he does stuff like this. So will he ever learn from his mistakes? The answer is probably not. Will he fight Stipe Miocic? That remains to be seen. The other huge question though too is, will the UFC say anything about it? Given that they don't really handle legal ramifications very well, and the fans have been critical of that exact fact of them not putting out press releases. They probably won't do anything about this either, and that's just putting it lightly. We're going to move right along though into Zan's look ahead just briefly here though. A bunch of stuff just to go over. Again, a reminder about the Olympics. July 26th is and everything gets underway, so that'll be exciting from an Olympics perspective. Just to give you a brief overview of the schedule at large for what the Olympics might look like, just because there are events through the first couple of days ahead of the opening ceremony. And by the way, it is like over a week and a half long event, and there's events at all hours of the day and into all hours of the evening, as well as it does take place from Paris. So the timing is a little bit off. Um, and it's going to definitely be a fun Olympics. Finally back. The official start date for it Wednesday, July 24th. The Olympic opening ceremonies begin Friday, July 26th. It'll be opened by French President Emmanuel Macron. There's going to be rugby and soccer as the first two events of the 2024 Summer Olympics. Just to give you a brief schedule, we've got artistic swimming, we got diving, we got marathon swimming, water polo, archery, athletics, badminton, basketball, 3-on-3 basketball, boxing, breaking, sprint canoeing, road cycling, track cycling, BMX, bikes, mountain biking, horse racing, fencing, field hockey, golf, artistic gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, trampoline gymnastics, handball, judo, um, modern pentathlon, rowing, rugby, sailing, shooting, skateboarding, soccer, sport climbing, surfing, table tennis, taekwondo, tennis, and a bunch of other sports that if I were to list all of them, we'd be here all day. But the fact of the matter is, there's tons of stuff for everyone. It's going to be broadcasted all across the NBC family of networks, including some events streaming exclusively on I almost said Playback. I meant to say streaming exclusively on Peacock. So for those of you who want to stream the Olympics and only stream the Olympics, you can do exactly that. Moving right along to just quickly more news and notes regarding the college football video game and everything that's going around with it. Early release access came out a couple of days ago. The official release of the game comes out on July 19th, so a lot of exciting stuff there. 500,000 people were on the online server as of Monday, so you already know that this is going to be one of the biggest games in the entire world, not just in the United States. So a lot of exciting stuff surrounding the game, a lot of realistic entrances, a lot of stuff in regards to dynasty mode. Obviously exhibition mode. You could play with any team you want, any commentary setting, college football playoff, regular season, what have you. A lot of exciting stuff surrounding this game. Again, you can only pick it up on next gen Xbox consoles and the PlayStation 5. If you have not already pre-ordered it, you only have a couple more days to do so. And if you get the main edition, you also get Madden NFL 25 included with it as well. And finally, the last segment of Zan's Look Ahead, just wanted to briefly go over the UFC's upcoming event schedule. So as I just alluded to, we got fights this week from the Apex. Then the following week, we got UFC 304 in Manchester, obviously headlined by 2 title fights. Then we go over to Abu Dhabi for a card at the beginning of August. Then we come back to the Apex for a card on August 10th, which is going to be headlined by a very, I guess, questionable heavyweight main event, to say the least, but we'll get more into that in the weeks to come. Then, of course, we got Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. Then we have another fight night card on August 24th. Then after that, it's a bit of a blur. We're obviously going to have the event at the Sphere in September and in Paris. And then after September, we don't exactly know what the October, November, December schedule is going to look like. But just stay on alert that the UFC will be on for about the next 6 to 7 weeks consecutively through ESPN Plus, ESPN, ESPN2, etc., etc. Again, the next 2 pay-per-views, just in case you didn't catch that, were UFC 304, July 27th in Manchester, and then, of course, August 17th in Perth, Australia, headlined by Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya, highly anticipated middleweight fight that's been over a year in the making. So stay tuned for more UFC content, both on Puncher's Chance and the MMA Outsiders, as well as here. And if you want the full prediction landscape for UFC Vegas 94, check our MMA Outsider socials Saturday, the day of the event, just before 5 o'clock Eastern, to get the entire slate, the full 12 fight prediction graphics that we normally do, and we will go from there. And that's going to um wrap it up for another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. Thank you again for tuning in to the show. Again, my name is Zain Bando. I'm a sports journalist and the ATP Network host for several different outlets, including the Sporting News, MMA Knockout. I obviously host the two shows here, and I do a couple of other things as well outside of the network. So thank you again for tuning in to another exciting edition of the show again. And we covered a lot in about a 45-minute time span. So thank you again for listening. Just wanted to briefly remind you guys that you can listen to this show and every other show wherever you get your podcasts and so much more. Again, that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Premium, Acast, so much more. You know the drill. If you're on the audio-only platforms, you can move over to the YouTube home and also listen or watch me there. And then, of course, you do the inverse of that. And so much more. Again, go to youtube.com/ETV Network. Be sure to hit the notification bell, like, and subscribe, and so much more. Again, my name is Zain Bando. This has been episode 13 of Bando's Breakdowns. And thank you again for tuning in to another edition. I will be back next week with episode 14, where we're going to get closer and closer to the NFL season. The preseason is will be on the horizon, and several other exciting sports topics and a whole lot more fun. So I will see you guys very soon, and have a wonderful rest of your week, and enjoy all of the major sports that are taking place this weekend, whether it's the NBA Summer League, Jake Paul versus Mike Perry, and other stuff that I'm forgetting, and all the other sports. But until then, I will see you guys soon. Have a good one.